There's a gentleman on Twitter. You remember a couple days ago we were talking about the Ken Burns documentary in Vietnam. I said, wow, some troubling stuff. I will always believe that it was honorable to try to fight communism in Southeast Asia, but I wonder if we ever could have won without dropping a nuke on them. That was essentially my point. This was mightily annoying to some. So one particular guy said, call the show, and he did. And so we'll talk to him next, and I'm extremely pleased. 866-660-5759. So I don't even know what in the world got us to Vietnam or something. I'm slogging my way through the Ken Burns documentary, which is a masterpiece. But you got to keep your eye open for Ken's politics, which are not my own, et cetera, et cetera. And we were riffing about this one day, and I said what I just shared, that boy, how might we have won in Vietnam? There are a lot of people who say Vietnam was a mistake and we never should have gone. I've never said that. I never will. It was honorable, and the men who went and did this deserve to be as revered as any other greatest generation. But I wondered if we wouldn't have had to drop a nuke on them to end that war, just as we did in Japan. I don't know how we would have won. So among the Twitter responses to that, a gentleman named Tim says on Twitter, the insufferable Mark Davis watched half of Ken Burns' documentary on Vietnam and is now a supposed expert on the subject. Who wants a debate? Well, if anybody knows me, I do. So Tim, welcome. Very nice to have you. How you doing?
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. Dude, come on. I never purported to be an expert on anything. What's the gripe? What's the gripe?
Well, the question is, how could they have won? My thesis is we did win. In late 1972, South Vietnam and the United States were winning the war decisively. Right. And by every metric, it was a rout. This isn't just my opinion. This is the opinion of the enemy, the North Vietnamese government officials. Victory was assured because President Nixon started an extensive bombing campaign in Hanoi and Haiphong, and with the effort to bring the North Vietnamese government back to the Paris Peace Accords, which they had previously walked away from. Right. And it worked. They came running with their tail between their legs, screaming, "No mas." We stopped the bombing, and the North Vietnamese government and the Viet Cong both signed the Paris Peace Accords. And in those accords, we got nothing short of victory.
So why didn't it play out that way? If that is so, I know what you're talking about, but why in 73, 74, 75 did we bug out, and why is Vietnam a communist country today if we won?
Okay, so in those accords, we made the pledge that we would provide aid in the event of North Vietnamese aggression. It was called the bullet for bullet program. Right. We would if they used a bullet, we would replace it, and it all fell apart with Watergate. 3 months after Nixon resigned, the Democrats had a resounding landslide victory in Congress, and they voted to end the aid that we had promised the South Vietnamese. President Ford went on live TV and literally begged them, please don't do this. And many of them walked out while he was giving the speech. They had a vested interest in our failing.
That's not a bad point. In fact, it's not a bad point at all. I don't know if the years 1973 and 74, which I remember, if things were leaning so heavily toward the notion that we were about to win. There obviously was a lot less protesting going on as the POWs came home and our involvement began to wind down. So to finish your thesis, that but for the meltdown of Nixon, that things would have continued in a more linear fashion, and we would have been able to hammer out something where Vietnam would not have become a unified communist country?
Well, we know for a fact it worked because they told us after the fact that there was a cessation of hostilities, but then after with the public announcement that we were no longer going to provide aid, they decided to test President Ford's resolve. So they crept across the border, invaded a small hamlet, nothing. Then a little further south, small village, nothing. Soon they took a city, no resistance, so they knew they had a straight shot to Saigon. So in short, we snatched the defeat from the jaws of victory. My thesis, Mark, is this: the U.S. military won the Vietnam War. It was the politicians who lost it.
Yeah, and there's a strong argument to that. Let me have you address one last thing because I'm glad you were here. I appreciate it. We were beating them so soundly. The metric of the comparisons of survivors and the whole balance. We were killing 10 of them for every one of us. But isn't it pretty well true that America didn't care about the 10 of them because it was the one of us that we got hung up on. The war became horribly unpopular, and we just didn't care anymore.
Well, the lesson to be learned in this is, there's two lessons. First is we have the strongest military in the world. I mean, we spend more on our military than the rest of the world combined. So we can easily defeat somebody. But the second part of that is that we need to have the resolve to stay there long term if we're going to do it. And I don't know that we have those kind of long-term commitments anymore. So I have a question going into any of these conflicts.
You got that right, because if you don't go in ready to kill people and break things, I've had a thesis for a long time that the only way to win a war, no matter what, Revolutionary War, Vietnam, World War I, wars we've won, wars we've lost, is you have to kill enough of the enemy that they decide to stop fighting you.
And then you have to plan on staying there. I mean, look at Germany, look at Japan, look at Korea. We're still in all of those places.
Exactly.
It's a long-term commitment.
Exactly. Well, listen, insufferable though I may be, I'm glad to have you on the show. Give me a buzz anytime, and I hope you think it was time well spent.
It was. I appreciate it, Mark.
My pleasure. God bless.